pod bay doors, please, Hal.
I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and OverthinkingOscars.wordpress.com. Seated here with my fellow 2020 apocalypse survivor, the critic, dare I say legend, from TalkMovieMe.com, Mr. Doug Keller. How the heck are you today, sir?
What the hell day is it?
You know what it is? You know what day it is?
When are we?
Not 2020. That's where we are right now.
I've been watching so many movies in the last month that it's like I turn on one and then when it's over I stop it and put in the next one and I stop it and put in the next one. It's like I don't even know when or where I am.
It's Saturday. 36 movies I watched since last Saturday. And just
I only got in about 15, but
yeah.
I count. I don't think I'm going to do it for this year, but I would write down every day what movie I watched, and then I counted them up.
Yeah.
Soul was my final movie of the year. And it was my 746th film of the year.
Wow.
Last year, I hit an even 400.
The joys of quarantine.
So I did about 346 more than I did last year, which is almost double. So that was cool.
And 5 of those were me twisting your arm. Almost physically forcing you to sit down and watch Small Axe.
They were on my to-do list. They just weren't very high on my to-do list.
Trying to get up here.
And now that the OFCS isn't really allowing them to be nominated, I feel as though that might have been a waste of time, despite how great they were.
Right. Well, 2020, let me tell you this. I'm glad the dumpster fire is out.
Yeah. This was the best year for good movies.
Not great.
And the worst year for great movies that I've seen in quite a while.
Well, the thing that got me, and it didn't really hit me until maybe July, is that in the crises that we've been through before, no matter what it is, whatever world crises, whatever war or terrorist act or whatever, and what really scares me about 2020 is we never heard the word Taliban. You never heard news about them, so what are they?
There were well, actually, no, there was a weird peace treaty that was negotiated between the Taliban and us, and I think Pakistan, that happened in 2020. So there was a little bit, but if you were paying more attention to all the crap that all the misinformation and nonsense and chaos that was being spread from the White House, you would not have actually heard about that Taliban peace treaty.
Between racial problems, this plague, this epidemic, and the weirdest biblical thing I've ever seen in my life: wildfires on the West Coast and hurricanes on the East Coast.
And flooding, yeah, at the same time.
And right in the middle of it, having to deal with this nightmare clown circus of a presidential election that's still not over. And the strange thing is, and
it is. It's over.
It's just there for you individuals.
Biden has won Georgia 3 times. He's won Michigan 5 times. He's won Pennsylvania at least 4.
Well, we're going for an even 10, you know.
And you know, all he has is somehow Congress not ratifying the results on June 6th.
Right.
Which isn't going to happen.
Right.
I mean, unless McConnell gets really bold.
Well, even in that, even in these terrible times, the thing that I've noticed, and it didn't really hit me until July, is that in bad times we always go to the movies.
Yeah.
People go to the movies. We
Hmm.
escape the problems into that little dark room with a bunch of strangers. And in this pandemic, we didn't have that.
We couldn't do that.
I
Yeah.
couldn't do
I
that.
have not seen the inside of a movie theater since March.
I haven't seen the inside of a movie theater since February 26th. Ironically, the last movie I saw was The Godfather.
The last movie I saw in the theater was Onward.
Yeah. Well, the last movie I saw was The Godfather, which
Well,
is ironic because it's my favorite movie. So if I had to go out on
technically,
anything,
technically, the last movie I saw in a quote unquote theater, I went to the drive-in to see Tenet this year,
yeah,
this
which I
summer.
still have
But
not seen
I don't count that. Well, we have a screener for it.
somewhere. But what we're doing today is
it's a
we're
digital screener they sent out. So you know.
we're just talking about this movie year, and we're going to talk about some of the screeners that we saw. And we're critics, so belonging to the Online Film Critics Society. So we get screeners every year, which come in the form of either a disc or a link.
Hmm.
And this year we got more links than we did physical screeners. Personally, I
Right.
like the physical screeners that come in the mail because it reminds me of movies that I need to acknowledge.
Right. I like the physical ones too because you can actually see them and you can go, "Oh, I will watch this one."
Or I forgot that I'll go through the ones that my outbox and I'm like, oh, I forgot I need to nominate this.
Right, but uh, when it's the links, you can either miss it in your email
Goes to the junk mail.
it just kind of sits there in whatever app they've set up, or if they use Vimeo or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, it's easy to push those to the back,
Yeah.
and
Or they
but
get
this
buried in the
year,
in the volley of stuff that we get.
right. This year, though, not only were smaller um, studios like Bleecker Street and Amazon, or not Amazon, what the hell am I saying? Um, Magnolia
Mm.
uh, and Neon were doing more digital stuff already. Neon has been sending their wonderful little box of goodies for the last 4 years.
Neon sends like
Um,
this strange little book. If you
yeah,
ever got the like the Star Wars anthology, and it came in that little book form, and you flipped it, and you had a disc in each page, and it's
yeah,
like that.
uh, yeah. The Alien quadrilogy is set up like that.
Yeah,
You know, and it's I love those Neon books. They get bigger every year.
yeah, yeah. I still have them from years past. We are
Yeah,
up to,
I don't get rid of the screeners. This is year 4 for Neon. Um,
and I
I'm
have
actually
this year. It's year 4. It's actually it's listed as year 4. I actually have all of them.
Oh yeah, I don't get rid of my screeners. I just keep them on my shelf and use
Now,
them as
here's the thing. Here's the thing that gets me is when you get a screener, you get all manner of little things to tell you this is for award screening consideration only. This has been watermarked. Don't try to sell it. Don't try to do this. Don't try to do that. Um,
my favorite is shred it after
yeah,
or
I was
destroy
just
it
about to say
after
that.
the award seasons. I'm like, yeah, no.
But you get a disc, and what happens is the first thing that happens when you put the disc in is you get this little page, and it
You have to
says
accept.
it's like this secure screener is copyright linked for loaning for viewing by you, the member. Giggity. It contains a unique traceable watermark. In order to view this, you must agree not to copy, publicly perform, loan, rent, sell, upload, or give it away. And then you get an option. to accept or decline. Now, what happens when you decline?
It shuts off.
Does it self-destruct like Mission
No,
Impossible?
the disc just shuts off, and then when you put it back in, uh, you can hit accept and you can play it. It doesn't remember what you've
Yeah,
done.
I didn't know if it like
Uh,
destroyed the disc or what.
I tried that on a movie that I didn't really care if I got to see or not because it was streaming. So I didn't really care if the disc got damaged, like if it got screwed up by that. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, you just hit no, and then it shuts off, and then you take it out, put it back in, start it back up, and just hit accept because it doesn't. It doesn't have a memory. It's just a disc. It doesn't know,
I just
and
love
it's
that
not.
option.
Yeah, it's
Obviously,
not
by putting the disc
communicating
in,
online.
you're going to get that. I mean,
Yeah.
the decline feature is just kind of useless, but it's,
I prefer it when it says accept and play or accept and play with subtitles. Those are my
yeah, those are my
my
go-tos.
favorite options. Those are like
Because I go to uh, I always play it with subtitles.
I
Um,
always have them on too because it's just easier to.
and when you have a movie like Small Axe,
With the
in
Jamaican
which the
accents.
Jamaican accents
Oof.
are so thick.
There are some characters that it is just absolute. It's like the first season of Luke Cage.
Hmm.
The back half of this first season of Luke Cage, where everybody was talking,
Yeah,
it was all island people,
yeah.
and it was like, okay, well, yes, we need the, I need to know exactly what you're saying,
I need to know what you're
uh,
saying. I was
yeah,
like, I told my wife, I was like, I'm so glad I didn't see Small Axe in a in a film festival because we would have been sitting there just like I'm missing half the conversation because they're West Indian people and they're so thick the accents.
right. The patois is just very, very thick, and they speak very quickly. It's akin to when a Spanish speaking person translates out into English,
Yeah,
but they're still speaking at the speed that they speak Spanish in.
right.
It can get a little
Yeah.
difficult for people who do not speak the same way to fully understand.
Okay.
Um,
So to get this off on a weird note, um, we're going to talk about some of the films that we saw, and
we've seen a lot of them.
we've seen a lot of them. But I want to talk about one of the most and one of the most troubling, and that's Wonder Woman. Uh,
Yeah, what
this
happened here?
dropped on Christmas Day on HBO.
Right, we got a screener a few
I
days
never got it.
before, which is oh, I actually got to watch it before it hit
Never got
HBO
it.
Max a day or
No, we
two
watched
before
it on
it hit.
Christmas
Yeah,
Day. And we were
yeah.
sitting on the couch watching it, and it was just, first of all, why in the world is this 2.5 hours long?
I don't
There's,
know. The first one was 2.5 hours long, but it had a story that was at least 2 hours long. Uh, this didn't feel that beefed out. It felt like they were going more for tone than content, and it just kind of languished. It just kind of just
and they
ballooned on.
wanted to make the biggest movie they possibly could. And the
Yeah,
problem was that it's it's about an hour and a half worth of story that is offering you a movie that the trailer promised, but the movie did not deliver.
right. We were not. Gi- this is a classic situation where we were sold a movie that they didn't
Right,
make.
right.
Um, the trailer made me really want to see this movie and think that it was going to be a very good follow up to Wonder Woman, which I liked more than you did. Um,
But bear in mind, the trailer will always give you the movie they wish they made.
right, but if they can make the trailer out of that, couldn't they recut the movie into
True,
that?
very true. Um, at best, I liked the love story. The love story is really solid.
Yeah, the chemistry between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine is
It
there.
is Gal Gadot, by the way. We've been saying it
It's
wrong. It's not
yeah,
Gal Gadot. But yeah, the chemistry between the two of them, that's your movie.
yeah, and it's the second most underplayed portion
Mm,
of the film after
right.
Cheetah, who I look, I love Kristen Wiig, and she was very good in the alter ego part of it.
And she's
I don't buy her as a physically overpowering
but
person.
she's in this movie. She's Kristen Wiig is dedicated to the performance. She's in it.
Well, yes, she is dedicated to giving her finest interpretation of Michelle Pfeiffer's
Right.
Catwoman that I've seen in a long
But you never
time.
feel like
But
she's bored with the role or just trying to get through it. No, she's committed to it.
no, she's having a lot of
Yeah.
fun. She's having a lot of fun, and it's always nice to see when they give comedic actors a little bit more to work with, because she did get to be funny, but she also did get to kind of
Yeah.
turn and have real character moments. It's just because they were doing what they were doing with, what is it, Max
Mhm.
Lord, Pedro Pascal. Um, it got relegated to a beeline, and Cheetah is her arch
Right.
nemesis and has been for like 80
It's like Iron
years.
Man fighting the Mandarin. It's like it's so
Yeah,
underplayed and it's kind of played as a sideline to this Max Lord plot, which starts interestingly enough, which really starts with an interesting idea, but it goes so far that it just gets unsettling and really unpleasant.
right. And I liked that they um regrettably this did open up some regrettable uh racial choices for the Egyptians that was really upsetting and
Yeah,
Zionist, and it was
a little
uh,
uncomfortable.
I I saw a lot of things that were like, oh hey, Gal Gadot's finally screenwriting,
Yeah,
because she is
yeah,
Israeli, and I understand that she has taken some very hardline attitudes in terms of
mhm.
Israel, and in terms of the surrounding countries that
Understandably.
don't get along and have not gotten along for thousands and thousands of years. That does not excuse what they put into the movie. They should not have put that into the movie at all.
What I do like is the idea
But
of the consequences of this little thing, this little MacGuffin that they throw into the movie. The consequences just build and compile and keep going and going and going. Problem is,
it,
it goes too far.
right, it basically, yeah, it's the notion of I got mine, who cares about
Right,
yours, played out to the most logical and horrifying conclusion. It's like if everybody just does for
mhm,
themselves, everything will fall
right,
apart because we have to live together. And if we don't do that, we don't have a society wherein the things we
mhm,
want
right.
mean anything.
And it's the monkey's paw taken to an extreme.
Exactly, yeah.
Um, the one thing, and now before we move on, the one thing that really got me was there's a scene in the middle of this movie, and it's kind of magical. And it's a scene where Diana and Steve are flying over DC. Get it?
Mm. With the
Um,
fireworks, yeah.
and with the fireworks, and I got sad because I'm sitting there thinking it kind of landed on me. It's like, oh wow, I should have been watching this on the 4th of July and in a
In a
theater.
theater.
Because if there was
Yeah.
a movie this big was made to be in a theater, and I wonder if people's reaction wouldn't have been different if they saw it in a theater. But
It's possible. The theatrical experience does inform and color the opinion of a
mm,
movie. If you have a bad theatrical experience, you may not even remember. You may not even experience a great movie the way
mm.
you should.
It's also different when you're paying
You know.
$60 for it.
True.
When you're paying $60 just to get in the door, get drinks, and it's a little different experience. Like, yeah, the movie wasn't bad.
Yeah, yeah. Willing to give it a little bit more leeway.
Okay.
But I wasn't. I was disappointed with Wonder Woman 1984 because it wasn't what I uh, it wasn't what I was
Yeah,
promised.
yeah.
It wasn't what was billed. Um,
So what else we got?
Anywho,
So what else we got?
oh well, what else do we have? What else do you want to talk about? Because there's like some really great stuff. Why don't we talk about Chadwick Boseman for a
Oh
few
my
minutes?
God.
Because he's got two performances that are just top level Oscar
Ma
worthy
Rainey's Black Bottom
performances.
and The Five
Five
Bloods.
Bloods.
If he gets a nomination,
Um,
which I think he will, it'll be for Ma Rainey because it's a bigger part.
I don't. Yeah, I don't see him not getting nominated for that. I could see them hedging their bets and nominating for lead actor for Ma Rainey and supporting actor for The
Mm,
Five Bloods and hoping for the best that he comes out with one of them from
yeah,
somewhere.
it wouldn't surprise me because I guarantee you, by the
like
time the
that's what.
nominations come around, Netflix is going to be all over it. I mean, Netflix is going to be all over the nominations.
You know, I'm actually really disappointed in their push for Ma Rainey because it is one of the best reviewed movies
Hmm.
of the year. I think it's sitting at a 99% on Rotten
Hmm.
Tomatoes, which is unheard of a month after a movie
Yeah,
comes out. Um, and we get these things. We get things that are meant to sway our opinions. We'll get screenplays, we'll get soundtracks, scores,
sometimes we get the
special
soundtrack and the
booklets, and
song.
things
We don't
like
even get the
that. So,
movie.
yeah, well, so with Netflix, though, they have three movies that you could tell they really wanted to
Yeah,
push. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is one of them. However, it's the one that they have decided to not
yeah.
push. They gave us a six no, a 10-pound box of things for the trial of the Chicago Seven, which is a
They
wonderful
gave us a
film.
press kit
And
full
we'll
of
get.
stuff for Trial of Chicago 7, including a book that is the size of your high school social studies textbook.
Right, and it's a screenplay plus a
Yeah,
blurb book, basically. Just, hey, this person was good, this person was good, the director is great. The other one that they sent, though, is for the George Clooney movie Midnight Sky, which could not have been more average. Um, I was severely disappointed
I
with
was
Midnight
too.
Sky. I wanted so much from it, and it ended up being two separate movies that they stitched together that would have been better if they were two 90-minute movies telling the same story from
He's
different
got a good
perspectives.
idea. He's got a good
Yeah,
idea. It's him in this research facility in the Arctic, and it's 30 years in the future. And there's a space mission that is on its way back to Earth, and he's trying to warn them not to come back. And
Right, because there's been a nuclear holocaust and the Earth is basically just
right,
dying. And the only reason he's still alive is because he is at one of the most extreme points that it's taking the longest for the radiation to
right,
get to.
and he gets hooked up with his kid. Um, and that whole plot was just it's interesting where it's
So,
going. The problem is it never really gets there.
well, and and it also gets to places way too
Yeah.
fast. And um, conversely, it gets to other places way too
Hmm.
slow. So this is not a spoiler free. So I guess we're gonna wait on Chadwick Boseman for a minute to talk about Midnight Sky because this was really upsetting. Um, he he takes the story of Felicity Jones's
Hmm.
character.
He's an astronaut.
Right. When you piece together that she is actually the George Clooney character on Earth's
Hmm.
daughter, I don't know when you figured that out, but I figured that out when we went the first
Hmm.
flashback.
Yeah.
And Augustine meets the girl, and they're like, okay, they're splitting up. I'm like, okay, she's his daughter. He has to
Yeah.
know that. And he
Hmm.
doesn't. Until the very end. If they would have known about each other, but not actually known each other, there would have been a dramatic tension that would have been able to have sustained that last maybe 45 minutes of the movie when they're actually in contact with each other
I was so uninvolved by
that
that
it just doesn't
point. Honestly, I
have.
was so uninvolved by that point. I
Yeah,
didn't care.
exactly.
The thing is, the thing that gets
Exactly.
me is George Clooney made two solid films right at the beginning. He directed two solid films.
Right.
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which is brilliant, and also for my money anyway, and
I love Good
and
Night
Good
and
Night,
Good
Good
Luck.
Luck. Everything
Um,
after that has been, eh. Everything he's
yeah,
directed after that
exactly.
has been, eh.
He has such a
Mm-hmm.
potential as a director. The trouble is he ends up hamstringing himself because he tr- partway through I think the development of the movie, possibly even partway through the shooting of the movie, he decides to go every time for a more commercial
Mm-hmm.
slant, which is not what he did with Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and Good Night and Good Luck, which is why they succeed
Mm-hmm.
so well. But he is artificially trying to generate emotional
Yeah.
hits, and it doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
that way. Leatherheads is half of a good
Yeah.
movie. Ides of March is half of a
Mm-hmm.
good movie. Midnight Sky is two separate good movies that when they put together becomes very
Right.
uninvolving.
And it's just not.
So
It's
they sent anyway, sorry. They sent out this
yeah.
book, soundtrack, the score for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I just
Mm-hmm.
got 2 days ago the
Yeah. So did
DVD
I.
and no supplemental
I
anything.
appreciate the subtlety.
This is the
I
movie.
appreciate the subtlety. We just
Yeah,
want you to
well,
notice the movie. You know.
right, right. But that is their strongest
Yeah.
contender for any
Yeah.
awards, specifically actor and actress, adapted screenplay, and best
Yeah.
picture, in
And it's
my
so
opinion.
ragingly underwhelming. I'm going to tell you another movie that I was reasonably underwhelmed by, despite the fact that it's getting a lot of acclaim, and that's News of the World.
Oh, I was not a big fan of that one either.
I
It
love
was it was
Brian
okay.
Tellerico on ebert.com had a great quote about it. He had a great observation about it. you could bet your bottom dollar this is going to be on heavy rotation on TNT in about 2 years.
Yeah.
Because you don't have
It's
to
one of
really, you
those.
really don't have to cut anything. And it looks like a movie
No.
tailor made for TNT. And
Well, it looks it's a ever since United 93 and maybe the Bourne Ultimatum, Paul Greengrass has been delivering decent
yeah,
movies. And that's
yeah,
it.
decent movies.
Like,
Kind of,
yeah,
eh,
he has yeah, he has never been able to match the intensity that he managed in the Bourne
mhm,
Ultimatum or the immediacy that he did in United
mhm,
93. He's never been able to
right.
recapture that. And uh, this is such a standard
Mm.
Western that it felt like Anthony Mann was brought back from the grave to direct it.
It's it's
Like,
so light. Now I will say I'm going to say I was
it's not
okay. The
bad.
story essentially is
It's
this.
just,
Um, Tom Hanks. This is 1870, and you can tell that it's 18 not only 1870 but 1870 in Texas, which is
yeah,
still trying to get itself back together after the end of the Civil War. And
yeah. Let's not forget, it took them an extra 3 years to actually free their
right,
slaves.
right. So, which, by the way, that's an issue that is almost completely left off, almost entirely left off, except for
Yeah,
one scene at the beginning. It is almost entirely. You never hear the N word. You
right.
never get any of that realism. This feels like one of those 10-cent novels that you would get, you know, a
Yeah,
couple of years ago. And he plays a guy, and I love this job, by the way. He travels from town to town, and he gathers people together, and he reads the news to them. He reads
right.
newspapers.
Because the literacy in 1870 was not particularly
Right.
widespread.
But he reads the major news stories from the major newspapers.
In phenomenal
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
Um, I wanted the story to be about
I did
that.
too. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if you had a story about a guy who sees what they've been through and sees how terrible things have been for them and kind of starts to spin the story into something a little more, a little, and then, and it could go from there. The problem is this goes into a standard Western formula wherein he finds a wayward child and has to
Right,
return her to her family, which is a
right.
theme that I
A
keep seeing
girl that,
in this year, by the way.
oh yeah, this was like she was a white girl that was raised by
Kiowa, the
natives.
Kiowa tribe.
Yeah. Um, she was in a raid and they spared her and started to raise her.
And she does
And
not,
so
she's
then,
been, I think she's what, 9, 10 years old. She does not speak English.
yeah,
She speaks Kiowa.
right. She speaks, yeah, Kiowa and smatterings of
Right.
German.
And that mystery of who she is, if you're going to go with this story, should have been the center of the story. Um, it's
Right, but
not.
it's still just a MacGuffin. It's just a plot motivator.
And when you get to the end of the movie,
And
you
then
realize there's not a lot to this movie.
no, because all it ends up becoming is uh he gets into a shootout in the mountains with a couple of guys that are trying to take
Hmm.
the girl.
Yeah.
And it becomes, Treasure of the Sierra Madre or you know, any of the the Naked
Hmm.
Spur of, Jimmy Stewart getting up on a hill to shoot down at people that are coming after him for terrible
That's what this
reasons.
is.
That's all
That's
this
what this is. It's an
is.
old Jimmy Stewart Western.
Yeah. It's an old Anthony Mann, Jimmy
Now,
Stewart movie,
I'll
but those were actually much more
now
involved.
I'll grant it this. I will grant it this. I was very impressed by this Helena Zingle, the little girl, because
hmm
she doesn't say a lot, but there's a something about her presence, the way she is very
she communicates very well despite not
right.
talking
Right.
much.
She's very, very good in this movie. Tom Hanks will be nominated
Yeah.
for it.
You know what? Tom Hanks has had two average movies this year. He had his screenwriting debut with
Hmm.
Greyhound, which was largely just nautical
Yeah.
directions. Like three-quarters of that screenplay is
Yeah.
nautical directions. Um, it's almost all entirely visual. It's just okay. It's just starboard z plus 5 degrees. You know this.
Yeah.
Like that's all it is, and it's
Hmm.
good. Did you
I
watch
didn't.
it?
Hmm.
Greyhound? Yeah, it's good. It's a thrilling, involving World War II naval battle
Hmm.
movie, but because it is specifically a naval battle
Hmm.
movie, there are no
None.
characters whatsoever
None.
at all. It's just it is just people yelling orders, and you get into it because you know the plight, but only because you knew the situation going in, not because of anything they developed.
And isn't it interesting with News of the World? This is Texas in the 1870s. There is not a blackface in this movie at all.
Yeah, no, not at all, not at all.
Um,
I guess that comes from a
yeah.
Scot directing an American movie that
It,
but
it's
still.
startlingly, like I said, it's an old Jimmy Stewart movie. The other one,
It's startlingly old-fashioned in a time when old-fashioned should not it can't doesn't work because leaving out the minorities is not how we do things anymore.
yeah, yeah, just no. Um,
Ignoring the fact that they were even there is not responsible filmmaking, Paul
yeah.
Greengrass.
Speaking of old fashioned, what about Wild Mountain Time?
Oh my god.
Did you have a toothache when this movie was over? Dear
Oh my
God.
god. I could not stand this thing.
Don't
So
give
the
Christopher Walken an
problem,
Irish accent, for heaven's sake.
don't give him an accent of any kind. Faith Begora. I don't want to give him the fire.
Ugh.
It was he was interminable in that.
This movie is a ball of
And
sugar. I was like,
I have no idea how the director managed to get such uninvolving performances from both Jamie Dornan and who else is in it?
well, you can stop at Jamie Dornan because Jamie Dornan is just a terrible actor. It just,
Well, yeah, yeah, but what's it? Who was the girl?
I don't blame, I don't blame you for forgetting
Why can't Why can't I remember?
Emily
Because she's
Blunt.
actually a Emily Blunt. Yes, she's very not Emily Blunt in
Can I
this,
can I
and
make a confession?
completely
I didn't
uninvolving.
see the end of this movie because I fell asleep.
You didn't
I
miss
fell
anything.
asleep.
Yeah, you didn't miss a thing at all.
This was
Um,
about 2 in the morning, and I was watching it. And about an hour into the movie, I fell asleep, and I was like, okay, I didn't see
yeah, I
anything that
mean
made me want to finish it up.
this was written and directed by John Patrick Shanley,
Oh, and that
who
breaks my
uh,
heart.
also did Joe versus the Volcano and
Which
Doubt. This is much more.
that's a wide swath.
I know. I want to let that sink in. His directorial debut, he wrote and directed Joe versus the Volcano. 20 years later, he wrote and directed
Right.
Doubt.
That
And
was a writer
then,
on Moonstruck.
what, 12 years? Yeah, he wrote Moonstruck, and 12 years later, he comes to us with this. piece of crap, which is way more Joe versus the volcano than it is Doubt.
Did I say that News of the World felt like a 10-cent novel? This feels like one of those books that you give to your grandmother, and it's like got the cover on the cover. It's got the guy in the quilt, got the guy in the kilt, and he's like
Right.
holding this.
Yeah, yeah, shirtless
Right.
and ripped and yeah, yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
kind of this is
Yeah,
that
those
kind of story, and
this
it's
is
just
the trashy romance novel. I mean, it is just an interminable. I actually watched the whole thing for some reason.
well, I
Um,
wanted to, but I just fell asleep.
no, no, you don't want to. I will tell you that right now. You don't want to, because the second hour is even more draggy than the
Let me tell you
first
something.
hour.
Let me tell you something. In our kitchen, we have a bowl that is full of. And today we're recording this. It's January 2nd. We have a bowl full of Christmas candy that's still left over. There is less sugar in that bowl than there is in this movie. I mean,
And you know what the worst part is? Like, they tried to make it saccharine and sweet, but the two leads are so
mhm.
uninvolved with what they're doing that I didn't realize this was a romantic comedy until an hour in. I was just like, I was overwhelmed by the sadness of these people living on this Irish farm, abutting another Irish farm. It's like there is nothing but tragedy for like an hour, and it's supposed to be a
Okay,
comedy.
I said that News of the
I,
World will fit comfortably on TNT. This will fit comfortably on the Hallmark Channel. I
hmm
mean, really,
This is a Hallmark movie that somehow
a
got
theatrical release.
diverted diverted from Hallmark. I don't really know how
Well,
it
I'll tell
did
you
that.
a very perplexing movie that I saw the other night, which I liked, sorta, was On the Rocks, which is Sofia Coppola's new
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. I saw that
I
one
never
too,
miss
and
a Sofia Coppola movie. I don't.
it's an enjoyable little bauble of a movie about people that have far too much
Right,
money. It's like a 30s screwball comedy
right.
about rich people. It's just set, excuse me, now, and it was fine. It was a
Rashida
fun little
Jones
movie.
is married to, is it Sean Wayans? And
Yeah.
he, the, she and her dad, played by Bill Murray, who's very good, by the way, played
Mm-hmm.
by Bill Murray, begin to suspect because he came home from a business trip with a woman's toiletry bag in his suitcase.
Yes, with massage oil in as the only
Right.
item in the toiletry bag.
And so she has a minor suspicion. Unfortunately, she relays this to her father, who takes it upon himself to weed him out, even though everything's pretty much explainable. My only problem with this, my only problem with this movie is it doesn't have a third act.
Yeah, no, it
It
doesn't.
it
It just kind
it
of
just
ends.
ends. It's an hour.
Yeah.
It's a little longer than 90 minutes, and it's missing the last act.
Yeah.
And when it was over, I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
They
Like, okay, when do we get the rest of this? Was this just an in
yeah,
progress release? Like 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 Apocalypse
yeah.
Now at the Cannes Film Festival in '79 is just a work in
I
progress.
literally saw the end of this movie, and when the credits came up, I was like, well, wait a minute, what? I seriously, it was like the thing just ended. Um,
Yeah.
I got a lot of movies this year that I wish would have ended sooner. That was I'm thinking of ending things.
That was messed
God,
up.
give me a break.
That was Charlie Kaufman to the nth degree, and
Oh God, help me.
I mean, it was even more disjointed than Synecdoche, New York.
or however you say
And
that.
Synecdoche, New York is a difficult movie.
This is worse because it's trying to be
Yeah.
quirky. I love Charlie Kaufman. Don't get me wrong. Charlie Kaufman's wonderful. But this is frustrating
Yeah.
because,
You never quite get a handle on what's
no.
happening, because every time you do, the movie changes the
Mm,
rules. So I actually likened it. It's kind of like a companion piece to Darren Aronofsky's Mother from a
yeah,
couple of years ago with Jennifer Lawrence and Javier
yeah.
Bardem. I think it as a spiritual uh, double bill. You know, they feel very similar in the uh, marring of time and uh, timelines. It feels like it's just a merged timelines that one person is kind of fleeting in and out of. Uh, there's a lot
Hmm.
there, but I don't think it's worth finding out.
I'm looking at his film. See, I'm looking at his filmography, and I can tell you that Adaptation, I loved. Eternal
Yes.
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. Being John Malkovich, again,
Yes.
one of my favorite movies. Synecdoche,
Yes.
New York. I still don't understand that movie, but I still love it. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it. This was just frustrating.
You weren't a fan of Anomalisa, were
Anomalisa, I
you?
hated. It was an experiment that just didn't work. It just,
I liked
yeah,
Anomalisa
I did not like that movie at
quite a
all.
bit. Um, but so those are kind of the bottom. Why don't we get to the
Let's talk
top?
about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom
I love this movie so
because
much.
this is August.
This is my favorite movie of the year.
This is August Wilson.
Shot shot here in
Hmm.
my home digs of Pittsburgh.
Well, the Pittsburgh
Um,
cycle.
so was I'm Your
Yeah,
Woman. Shot in
yeah.
Pittsburgh, which I didn't realize until I started noticing businesses that I've driven past and been in, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute! This is Pittsburgh in the '70s."
This is part of the Pittsburgh cycle. It was a series of 10 plays that August Wilson did. Um,
Who August Wilson, who was from
yes.
Pittsburgh.
And I
Um,
love his staging. I love what he does. Um, he sets up these characters who are in a room, and he did the same thing with Fences, where he just
yes,
gives them a location and they start talking back and forth. And they give the conversation starts with one thing, and then it moves like real life, but it gets deeper and deeper and deeper into lifestyles, into
hmm
the meaning of life. It's so brilliant the way he does this. I love
yes,
listening to that
and the
dialogue,
yeah, it's adapted
and it's combative.
really well. Yeah,
This
it's adapted from the play very
mhm,
well. Um, I didn't realize I look. I went into this because I am deep into early blues of the 20s and
mhm,
30s. So I already knew who Ma Rainey was, and that's why I wanted to watch the
yeah,
movie before I knew anything else
yeah,
about it. I was like, "Oh, Viola Davis is Ma
mhm.
Rainey, okay," and then it's like, "Oh, Chadwick Boseman's in it
And then you
too,"
realize
and then I started,
it's really not even her movie. It's his.
yeah, when um when he started his first
Mhm.
monologue is when I realized that this was adapted from a
Right.
play. And then I went into it and started looking into it. I was like, oh, it's August
Mhm.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay. So, uh, um, produced by Denzel
Yes.
Washington, um, who adapted and directed Fences. a few
And
years
starred in
ago,
it.
and starred in it, and should have won an Oscar
Hmm.
for it. Viola Davis did, but she should have probably won Best Lead Actress and not Best Supporting
I'm
Actress.
just
But
happy she has an Oscar.
um, I I'm happy she has an Oscar. I regret that she has an
Yeah,
Oscar and not
several.
Oscars.
Well, the thing is,
This should be her
in
second.
moving into this story, it's so amazing because this character, Levy, that Chadwick Boseman plays, is a young musician who's in with this band, and he wants the freedom to express himself as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever played music, you know that in a situation like this, they want you to play the music as it's written. And he wants the freedom to be
Yes.
able to express. And also, this is the 1920s, so he's a black man in the 1920s, largely cannot express himself at all. And
Right.
so through that instrument, he can express himself, but he's finding himself his feet chained to the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants to be great at what he can do, not what others tell him he has to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably one of my favorite characters of the year.
Yeah.
I was so wrapped up. I was so invested in what Chadwick Boseman was doing here, playing a
Mm-hmm.
kid who wants to do something and can't, and you can feel the frustration.
Right.
Um, if he were older, probably would have been more accepting to the crowd,
Well, if he were older, he would have fit right in with the rest
or
of the
been like the other
band.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I love that this uh, doesn't make an issue of, but does mention both uh, Ma Rainey's
Mhm.
homosexuality, um, the kind of not really rivalry between Bessie Smith and Ma
But
Rainey,
it's mentioned.
because yes, but Bessie was uh, a student of Ma Rainey who just got more
Yeah,
popular, more
they got a
famous.
bigger name.
Right. And Bessie Smith was also bisexual
Yes.
or gay. Um, and it gets into the ways that white studio executives took black music away from black
Hmm.
people and softened it for
Yeah.
themselves. Because there's this sideline that Levy, the Chadwick Boseman character, is trying to get his own record
Yeah.
made. With his own songs that the guy is saying, yes, these are really good, these are really good. Then after he finally gets them in his hand, he goes, yeah, I don't think we can use any
Yeah.
of these. And the movie ends with them recording Levy's
Hmm.
stuff after having paid him what, five
Yeah.
dollars for the rights to the
Hmm.
songs that will then make them
Millions,
thousands.
if not millions.
Yeah, yeah, if not millions. Millions were harder to come by in the 20s, but um, I love that it that it talks about that, because that's something that did not change
Mhm.
uh, until
Exploiting black performers for their talent, but not paying them what their music was really worth, and basically robbing them
right,
of what was owed to them.
which ended up uh, expanding to every artist
Hmm.
signing to a
Yeah.
label, which was the whole reason Tom Petty took his record company to court in the 70s while he was recording Damn the
Hmm.
Torpedoes. Um, it was an effort to actually get him to have his own publishing rights because he wasn't making any money on his
Hmm.
songs. Nobody was making money on their own
Right.
songs until that, and that got changed. So it was the late 70s. It was like 78 or 79
Hmm.
before musicians were really able to own their masters and own their work. That's why Ray Charles's deal was so
Hmm.
astronomical and stunning. Frank Sinatra didn't even own his own
Right.
masters. But going back into the 20s when they were recording this, I love the detail that they're putting it down on the wax, and if they screw up, they have to throw the record
Yeah, there's a
out.
subplot about this young fellow that Ma Rainey has. She wants him to do the intro, but the problem is he has a terrible stutter.
It's her
It's her
nephew.
nephew. And it's he keeps trying to do it and he keeps screwing it up. There's this montage where they keep throwing the record in the box because it's just one after another after another after another. And then when he finally gets it right,
Because
it's screwed up because it didn't record.
right, it didn't record properly. Right, and I love that they're like trying to keep costs down because you have to get a new fresh pressed
Yeah.
uh, vinyl disc every time, and you have to throw in the no good ones so that it can then be melted down and repressed into a blank
Yeah.
vinyl record.
Yeah. If you've ever seen those old discs, and you try to pick one up, it will crumble in your hands because they were not stable. I want to talk about Viola Davis. Um, Maybe you have a different viewpoint on this. The character she plays, Ma Rainey, the note for the character is whatever Ma Rainey wants, Ma Rainey gets. That's the note for the
Hmm.
character.
Yeah.
She keeps asking for things. They keep saying no. She says, "No, I'm not asking. Because whatever I want, I get." That's the
Yeah.
template of the character.
Yeah.
My problem is there didn't seem to be a lot more to it than that. Um, I like the performance. I do, very much so. But it seemed to be that note over and over again.
Well, I ask you to look at it in this way. Um, at that
Mhm.
time, women, let alone black
Right,
women, didn't get their say in
right.
anything. And Ma Rainey was very well
Hmm.
known for knowing that they needed
Right.
her. And she exploited
Hmm.
that,
As she does in the movie.
as she does in the movie. But the reason she pushes them is because she knows she can, and she's going to do it as much as she can until she can't
Hmm.
anymore. And it's that kind of psychology for the character that makes her the force she is when she gets behind the
Hmm.
microphone. You couldn't have Ma Rainey on record without this persona.
I just felt like
If she were even a little bit
I think
me,
my I
it
think
wouldn't.
my objection generally is the movie didn't use enough of her. Um, it's not a long movie. It's only nine.
That I
It's only
agree
not
with.
even. I
It's
think that
only an
may
hour and
be
a
the
half.
problem
Yeah.
is that when I'm looking at the performance, um, she really doesn't. She really kind of comes in a little later in the movie because the weight of the film is on Levy. But
Yeah, yeah,
when we get to Ma Rainey, it's probably maybe half an hour into the movie, something like that.
yeah. It's a
It's a
while.
while,
It's a while.
and she does come in as this massive presence. But I somehow felt like, okay, I would have liked a little more of her. Um, I think the weight of the film between the story of Levy and the story of Ma Rainey was more tilted toward Levy. I like the story of Levy,
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
um, but it maybe needed to be a little longer. Maybe I don't know.
I would agree with that. I would have kept watching that for another half hour to an hour. Um, yeah, just the way that it's acted, the way that it's directed.
This is an actor's
I
movie.
was actually really, I was really impressed by how it was directed, though, because the director did not just sit there and say, "Okay, well, it's a play,
Mhm.
go," and not do anything. He is using his
Yeah,
camera with great
he is.
effect, um, turning this little basically two-room showpiece
Hmm.
drama into a very kinetic, active, and lively
Right.
film, visually as well as from the performances. It's a very dazzling piece of
Mhm.
work, and it's my favorite movie of the year. Um,
I want to talk about, well, moving to another movie that I won't say it's the best movie of the year, but I will say I had a good time watching it, and that was Promising Young Woman.
the third act of that is what makes that
If you're
amazing.
not thinking about it,
Uh,
if you start to break it apart and you start to think about it logically, it doesn't work, but it's fun while you're watching it. Um,
it's a really clever piece of
it's the
writing.
Me Too revenge thriller.
Yeah, that doesn't really know what it
Yeah,
wants until the last act, and then you start to figure that this may have been a long game
yeah.
anyway.
Carrie
Um,
Mulligan. Um,
the fact that she dies
Spoiler
with
alert.
25 minutes left in the movie. Hey, I said that there was spoilers in this right up at the beginning. When we started talking about Midnight Sky, because you can't talk about Midnight Sky without
Right.
spoiling it. Um,
She plays this woman
this,
who
oh,
she was sexually assaulted years ago, I think at a college party.
oh no, she wasn't. Her
Her
friend
friend was.
was. She grew up with this girl. They were going to become doctors together. They went to med school, and she got blackout drunk. This friend got blackout drunk and um, was raped because she could not give
Mhm.
consent. But it was in the middle of a party with everybody standing around watching this happen, and there turns out there was a
Mhm.
video made of it that had been circulated, and people thought at the time that it was funny because she was too drunk and she couldn't say no. Um, the stress of that caused her to drop out of med
Mhm.
school, and Carrie Mulligan's character went with her because they'd been best friends since they were kids. And then the the girl killed
Right.
herself because of all of this. And that's when Carrie Mulligan stopped. Like she could have been a great doctor, but she works in a
She's a
coffee
barista.
shop. Right, she's a barista, which there's nothing wrong with that. But she only does that because she needs money. She still lives with her parents. She doesn't care about anything except going out at night and pretending to be blackout drunk so she can lure men into a lesson.
Right.
Because she doesn't kill them.
No.
She makes them sit with what they were going to do and makes them realize that it's rape,
Mhm.
even if she doesn't say no, if she can't say
Mm,
yes, if the other party cannot say yes and does not say, please, let's do
mhm.
this, it's
Yeah.
rape, sexual assault,
Or
rape.
if
And
you're in a state in which you are not fully conscious, it doesn't matter. You know, you're drunk, you're tired, you're
you're not in full command of your faculties to make an informed
right.
decision.
Um,
So then she meets up with a guy that went to med school with her, and they kind of start dating,
this was a
and it looks like
shock
things are
to me.
going to go really well for her, and then she ends up the friend somebody who also went there gives her this video. She hears her boyfriend's voice on the tape, so he was not only there but saw what was happening and did nothing to
Mm.
stop it. So he became an accessory. She cut all emotional ties, set up a thing at a bachelor party to basically ruin everyone's lives that were involved in this
And
thing.
what's really interesting to me is the idea that uh, when you it's a very uneven film. It's very disjointed. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
perfect at all. This is a directorial debut of Emerald Fennell, who was she was a showrunner on the Canadian series Killing Eve, and she's been
Mm,
an actress for years. She's on The Crown, and
mm-hmm.
this is her directorial debut. You can't I can't say it's a great film because there are elements of it that don't seem to make a lot of sense in conjunction with parts of the rest of the movie. But as a whole, the movie does work because basically she's
Mm-hmm.
trying to lure these men into a state of culpability, whether they
Mm-hmm.
committed the rape themselves or not. If they were part of it, if they were there, if they were videotaping it and did nothing to stop it, then they were just as
Mm-hmm.
culpable as the people who were actually doing it.
If they were
Right.
complacent, you know, so she sets up this whole thing for this bachelor party that if it's successful on one end, she will have murdered the guy that raped her
Mhm.
friend. If it's unsuccessful, which it ends up being, she had a beautiful, perfect Batman backup
Mhm.
plan to kick everything off, sending the video to a reporter or to a
Mhm.
lawyer who sent it to the police. The police come and they break up the wedding because then they find her dead
Mhm.
body and they find out about the rape. And I mean,
Yeah.
everybody at that wedding's lives are
Mhm.
ruined now.
And
It
justifiably
is an
so.
entire it is an entire class of med students wiped out.
What's really strange to me is, first of all, the guys in this movie are complete scumbags. Every single one of them. They're
Yeah.
all creepy and
Well, you know what?
slimy.
Every every person that's in authority too, because the headmistress,
Mhm.
the schoolmistress
Yes.
of the med school, she's like, well, what did you want me to do? Ruin this young man's life and
Yes.
career? It's like, yes, because he ruined this girl's life and career. Why is her life less important than his
that
life?
scene where
Just because he has a dick doesn't make him more
that scene
important.
where she's sitting in that office and she's breaking this woman down who's trying to maintain that
Oh,
professional demeanor. Oh my god, it was just it some of this is hard to watch too because you just see
it is.
this.
It is because she gets the woman's
Yeah,
daughter,
supposedly.
and it looks like she abducts
Yeah.
her. She
Hmm.
doesn't, but she makes this woman think that her daughter is in great danger in a basically a re a simulation or
Hmm.
reenactment of what happened to her friend, and she's getting really upset because she realizes how terrible that
Hmm.
situation would have been and how little she did
Yeah,
for her
yeah,
student.
just to keep her job.
Um, so this is kind of a marvel of
Yeah.
screenwriting, and Carey Mulligan is wonderful in the
Mhm.
film.
It does take. It's trying to balance a measure of comedy, revenge
Mm-hmm.
thriller, and also trying to be real about the situation. It's often a little wobbly, um, but the end result is very very good. Um, let's move into some documentaries. Um, because I got to mention Totally Under Control, and I know this is going to send some people away from this episode, but I was fascinated by this.
Totally Under Control was really quite
And
good.
wasn't it interesting? It's like this is a piece of journalism. It's not just documenting the coronavirus, the spread of the coronavirus. They were making this as it was happening.
Right,
Alex
yeah.
Gibney,
Yeah.
um, who made Enron Smartest Guys in the Room, they were making this as it was happening, and they were following the progress. And the movie wants to do two things. On one hand, it wants to focus on how the coronavirus got out of Wuhan and spread to the United States,
If you want to see how it happened in Wuhan, watch the documentary 76 Days, which
which I
is
didn't
a
see.
harrowing movie that I should not have watched because my wife is an
Mhm.
RN in a hospital and will have to be dealing with this very shortly.
On the other hand, it's also trying to deal with how the Trump administration handled the early warnings of this crisis with
Mishandled.
with the force and power of a bowl of mashed potatoes,
Yeah.
and it does both of those things beautifully. And I was
Yeah.
really shocked because if you're following, if you were following the the pandemic as it was happening, it was really hard to follow because there was so much going on at the same time. But what he
Mm-hmm.
does is he manages to compact it so you can follow it from that first case until it became a global pandemic.
Right.
And he does a brilliant job of it.
He does. He does. And he doesn't really mince words in the fact that the US response was awful and botched and has cost hundreds, well over 100,000 lives that would not have been lost if there was positive
And
action.
tell him where the title came from.
Our illustrious, thankfully outgoing leader,
Those are the words he
uh,
used.
yeah, everything is totally under control.
That is what he
There's
said.
only one or two. It's gonna go away in a couple of
Hmm.
weeks. It's totally under
Yeah,
control.
those were his words.
Yeah.
I didn't see 76 Days. You want to talk a little bit about that?
It's no, because that would mean reliving it. Um, I'll tell you this: if you've seen the new version of The Stand,
Hmm.
in the first episode or so when they were going through the
Hmm.
ERs and it felt like I was rewatching 76
Wow.
Days. That's how horrifying it was, and that's where I'm going to leave that one. And from the documentaries, let's go to the wholly artificial. I'm going to talk about
This
Soul.
is my. Oh, well, let me tell you.
Mm,
Pixar, it's so glad to have you back. Oh my God.
it's good to have you back. I question your motives with the Lightyear movie, but I'm glad that we have you for Inside Out
Let me
and
explain that
Soul and
because you 2 years ago, they said that after Toy Story 4, they were going to lay off the sequels and just focus on
Mm-hmm.
some original content. But I see by a listing that's of their upcoming projects that something is called Lightyear. So I'm like, okay, is this a prequel, a sequel? What is this?
I have actually gotten information on that. A friend of mine has told me that Lightyear is going to be. Do you remember the like the backstory that you hear in Toy Story when he has his moment where he gets really depressed about, oh, I'm not really the Buzz Lightyear, the real Buzz Lightyear, and all of that. It's the commercial, and you get that whole backstory.
Yeah.
That's the Lightyear movie.
Hmm.
Is like making a movie about
So
um,
not
as if Buzz Lightyear were a real
okay. So not
character and not the
technically a
toy.
sequel.
No, it's kind of a prequel-ish. It's a film set within the same universe that will use at least one of the same characters in a different
Hmm.
fashion.
But I'm so happy for Soul.
But so,
This is my
oh,
favorite film of the year.
Jamie, oh,
Um,
this was absolutely
I
remarkable.
was I saw two movies on Christmas Day. I saw Wonder Woman and Soul. And Soul was not the one that I was expecting to be the better movie. Um, and that's largely because of experience. Because Onward
Hmm.
was and
Onward was
Toy
okay.
Story 4 was okay. Incredibles 2 was okay. But they were all, it just this original content that they were promising. I thought Onward was going to be a template of things to come. I hope it's Soul because this movie was remarkable from beginning to end.
Hmm.
They are at the top of their form with this.
Right. This is on par with Inside
Mhm.
Out, Wally, Up,
A lot of people
the first
compared
two
to it to
Toy
Inside Out
Stories.
um,
Yeah.
because it's not just the story, which comprises this idea of an afterlife, a very creative afterlife, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
um, but really gets into a philosophy of what have you done with your life? What do the pieces of your life are you spending your life? Are you wasting your life trying to get somewhere, or are you enjoying the journey along the way? And um, that's the what the movie comes down to because this musician dies on his way to a gig that
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to change his life. He ends up on the escalator going to the afterlife, but jumps off and ends up in the pre-life and ends up um, being a mentor to this misfit who doesn't want to be um,
Who has been there for so long. The
22.
one before her was Soul number what? 1,370,000,000,000, whatever, 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 whatever. And then the next one was 22. She was the 22nd soul to be created, and she still hasn't gone to
The one of
Earth.
the
Voiced brilliantly by Tina Fey. The only other person that could have done this as well would have been Sarah
Yeah,
Silverman,
yeah. Um,
but that would have crossed into Vanellope
yeah.
territories. So I'm glad they didn't go that way.
Well, the brilliant thing is she does not want to go she does not want to go to Earth.
No, and she's had some of the greatest people ever
I
in her
love it.
mentors, and she has taken apart every single uh, Gandhi, Jung, Freud,
Mother Teresa.
Copernicus, Mother Teresa. She said, Mother Teresa says, "I don't hate anyone but you."
This is the funniest part of the movie, by the way. It's just her
Yeah,
and her
yeah, yeah.
mentors, just not
Um, and he wants to go back to Earth. He wants a second shot.
because he was just at the
So
cusp of having this great opportunity,
yeah, yeah.
and he died, and he had to come back. So they end up going back through, um, because they're something about these pirates who travel the limbo. Something about it. I've forgotten. It's been a few days.
The way that they uh, get in, they're not
Hmm.
dead. They're what you call in the
Yeah.
zone. So if you have ever just been doing something and were just
Hmm.
taken away by the action and you lose conscious thought and it's just you're just doing this
Hmm.
thing, playing an instrument, spinning your
Hmm.
sign, uh, whatever you're meditating, whatever, you are just so focused on that that it is your only thing.
And the way they
That puts them
represent that,
into this afterlife.
the way they
Yeah.
represent that is beautiful because when he's playing, you see this sort of Northern Lights thing behind him,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
the animation in this.
Is
When he's on stage and he's looking at her and she's at the microphone playing saxophone, the lighting is gorgeous. The mood is gorgeous. It's just this was put together with love and care. And I was
mm-hmm.
impressed with how they focused on the afterlife.
I wish to note for the record that the person playing the saxophone, not the actress that's actually speaking, but the person who recorded the saxophone
Hmm.
music, is Beyonce's personal saxophone
I didn't
player.
know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Um,
So she's kind of good.
she's incredibly good.
Yeah.
But the afterlife, the landscape of the afterlife, is on par with the afterlife of the girl's head in Inside Out, in that they've created this
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
complete beautiful world. The
mm-hmm.
tenants who oversee the afterlife are these weird Picasso style drawings.
And they're all named.
Jerry, score one for the Jerrys of the world. And it's just beautiful.
Except for the uptight accountant whose name is
Just,
Terry.
yeah, yeah. I sat there the other night and I was like, because there are a lot of people who are complaining about this movie, that they felt that it was not. First of all, it's not a movie for children. It's really not. Kids can enjoy it, but it's
No.
not Toy Story.
In as much as like, you know, Inside Out or Up
Yeah,
were quote unquote kids
but
movies.
they can still enjoy it. It's just not. The message is really aimed at adults. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
a brave little move. I thought that was just
Mm-hmm.
such an amazing. I can't say enough about this movie. Um,
It's a spectacular picture.
it
I
focuses
hope.
on black characters. I love the
Mm-hmm.
scene where he goes to the barbershop.
Yeah.
He goes to the barbershop, and it's. We need to do an episode about this someday because I got too much to say. Um,
Yeah. The only other animated film that I thought was any good that I got to
mhm.
see was Wolf
I didn't get to
Walkers.
see
I
this.
highly recommend Wolf Walkers. I know you didn't. I'm just going to mention it here. Wolf Walkers, it's just recently been
Hmm.
released. I'm pretty sure it's on Apple TV Plus. Um, Wonderful picture from a studio that looks like they could be the Studio Ghibli successors.
It'll be nominated. Soul will win.
It won't win. Soul
Yeah,
will win, and Soul
Soul
should
should
win.
win. Um,
Um,
but let's move on.
I think, yeah, we're gonna start moving into the last ones that we're gonna talk
Yeah.
about. We're gonna wrap up after these
Um, we're
because
moving
we've
into
been going a
Nomadland.
while. Wow, is this a movie? Uh,
I had a really hard time with this one. Um, and I'm not saying that in any negative way, but I had a hard time because this one really got it. This one really fell to the real. It got
mhm,
uncomfortably close to real life. When I was
mhm,
watching this for the first time, I saw it 2 weeks ago. About 10 minutes into the movie, there's a monologue in which a woman talks about how her life fell apart when she got older and she got her Social Security check and she realized it was $500.
mhm.
And she's talking about all of this. It was not what I needed to hear at exactly that moment. I was dealing
That's
with
true.
my bills. I was dealing with a lot of stuff. I was trying to rearrange my budget, and I was having some difficulties trying to just kind of get it organized. And at that moment, it was this was not what I needed to hear.
Yeah,
So I had to turn it off. Well, I saw it again yesterday. It didn't get any better because this is not an easy film to experience. This is a movie for movie
it's
critics. This
not.
is not a movie for ordinary people. I can't imagine a lot of really just ordinary, you know, box office. You know,
Yeah, this is very uh, a very independent
it's a
film.
piece of art.
Uh, Cuts very close to the bone. Yes, it is. I did want to ask you if you might happen to know, because I've been watching obviously a lot of these independent films over my life, but it just suddenly started to realize I just started to realize that independent movies take you into the bathroom far too frequently.
I was going to mention this too because throughout the course of this movie, Frances McDormand both urinates and defecates. And I was going to ask
Yeah.
you about this because independent movies happen to do this. They're not afraid to do this, and I was like, do we need to go
You
here?
know, but I question the need for it. Just like I saw a tweet that said, you know, that no sex scene has ever added anything to a
Yeah,
storyline ever, and they are completely unnecessary in every movie, and that is true.
urination and defecation never add to a drama. They might add to a comedy, but not to a drama.
You're right, but to just okay, we know that they have to go to the
Hmm.
bathroom. Um, you know, it's not like there was some great clamoring among people that the box office the regular Cineplex stuff just would not show people going to the bathroom.
You know, people
There's
like
not been like
defecation.
a big outcry. Yeah, it's not been like a whole big we need to include this. It's just it became part of what they decided was realism, and it just it's I don't
By
need
the
any
way,
of that. I
I'm glad you brought this up because this was on my mind, and I wasn't going to bring it up. Um,
it's this isn't the only independent movie this year that I have watched that took me into and made me listen to going to the bathroom.
and don't you
I
love the
don't need it.
subtitle? Urinating. You know,
Yeah.
somebody wrote that.
It's like
Defecating.
thanks guys. Thanks y'all.
So the movie.
Um but the movie is uh it's hard to watch on one hand, because of how real it
And
is.
that's not a negative.
No, it's so real that Frances McDormand's character,
Mhm.
Fern, after her town, which was a mining town, the mine got shut down, and then the town just fell apart.
Empire, Nevada. Her
Yeah.
husband died. The mine shut down. Was it because of the recession, or they just didn't need sheetrock anymore?
Yeah.
And the mine shut down, and the town emptied. People relocated at such a heavy volume that the zip code
Well,
was
the town,
discontinued.
yeah, the town doesn't exist
Right.
anymore. And she, instead of moving to a new town, basically picked up this um, itinerant
Yeah.
lifestyle where she is not poor.
She's not homeless.
She's not homeless. She's houseless. I really liked
Hmm.
her delineation of
Yeah.
that. And that this is an entire group, an entire culture of people that do this, that live out of their vans and stuff like
And these
that,
are
that
real
just
people, by the way.
don't.
These are not actors.
The people that she encounters, yes, are actually real people who live, choose to live in this fashion.
Hmm.
Um, and knowing that, and watching Frances McDormand, she's always had the innate ability to make you believe that the person she was putting on screen was
Yeah.
real. Never more so than Fern.
Yeah.
Because she is inhabiting this
Hmm.
character that is living like this along with the people who are in real life doing this. And it's an easy, casual conversations between them, like nothing I've ever seen a non professional actor give in a
Hmm.
movie, because they weren't given
Hmm.
lines, they were given their lives.
Yeah.
And Frances McDormand is so real
Hmm.
here that she could have literally just been split into two people, and one person is Fern. And like, I have a hard time believing that Fern is not a real person,
Yeah.
and she's not.
I have. I was thinking this the other day. There's probably no other actor who could have played this,
No.
um, because she is so weathered and so real in this. I was worried, and one of the reasons that I had to shut it off at the beginning was because I've seen so many documentaries this year that are the narrative is this America,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the template. And I got so frustrated because there were like four documentaries that I saw right in a row, and they were all "Is This America" documentaries, and isn't it terrible, and what are we doing to ourselves? And I thought that's what this movie was going to be, and in some ways it is.
Yeah,
Um,
but in other ways, it's really quite hopeful
yeah.
and positive.
Um, I worried about her so much.
Yeah.
I didn't know where this movie. It's based on a book. I didn't know where this movie was going. Um, it turns out it's not really going anywhere.
Right. There's no plot.
But
There's just
the
characters.
ending is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen,
Yeah.
which goes back to what was Empire, and it's a way of
Mm-hmm.
saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Um, but you are so invested in everything she's doing. David Strathairn is really good in this. He
Mm-hmm.
accidentally breaks something that belonged to her husband, and I swear it made my stomach turn because I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
And it's so you are with this woman in every single moment.
Hmm.
And as I'm watching this movie, as I say, I was upset by it because of how close to real it gets.
Hmm.
But I love every frame of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's difficult to watch, but uh, it is a magnificent work, and
This will win.
I know that
This
the
will win Best Picture. She will win her third Oscar for it. The director will not be
Mhm.
nominated.
Chloe
Chloe
Zhao,
Zhao will not be nominated. She's a young Chinese
which is
woman.
sad because she has been getting a lot of Best
Yes,
Director prizes from critics
she'll
circles.
get the Golden
A
Globe.
lot.
She'll get the Golden Globe, maybe. Um, but she will not get an Oscar nomination because if we
Why? Because she has a vagina.
and she's Chinese. She's a young Chinese director. She hasn't made that many films, and she's not within that circle. So she might win a
Yeah, no,
screenplay award. She might win elsewhere, but she won't win the Best Director award.
which is
Just
tragic
tragic.
because the fact that this film works as a film
Mhm.
is because of Chloe Zhao.
And we're not saying that to be
Um,
snarky. We're saying that because of history. We're
yeah,
saying
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
she
yeah.
will not be nominated.
It's not that we don't want her to be nominated. We do.
Yes.
We just understand the reality and the sexism and the racism of the
Yeah.
Academy.
Speaking of racism,
Especially on Best Director Oscars. Oh, yes, let's switch to somebody else who should have a Best Director Oscar.
our last film is actually a collection of films. Let's talk about Small Axe. I had to twist Doug's arm to finally get him to this. I know it was on your list,
I was getting there.
but I wanted him. I
I was
wanted this
getting
on
there.
this show. Um,
I think I ended up finishing it before you
you
did.
did, you did, because I was up to the last one. I had not seen Education yet. If you don't know Small Axe, this is a series of 5 films that is directed by Steve McQueen, the Oscar winner for uh, 12 Years a Slave, and
Right,
not
not
Best
not
Director,
the dead actor.
not
Not the dead actor.
not the actor who died 40 years ago. Um,
Right.
but he won an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave,
Screenplay.
um, and Best Picture.
While producing. Yeah.
He should have won. He should have been nominated for Widows. I don't know why in the world that thing was completely shut out. But
That was completely ignored.
this is a very strange experiment. It's 5 films, and you want to talk about diversity? Deals with um, West Indians living in London in the 60s through the 80s and varying experiences of what happens to them.
Right. And the different films um, address different kinds of and different levels of uh, racism within the British school system,
Brutalized.
government system, and police system.
Now,
Um,
I asked you this question, but I didn't. I don't know if I got an answer. But what was your favorite? He looks away to think.
I don't know. Um, I was probably. I think I probably liked Red, White, and Blue the most.
It had the most straightforward plot.
Um, although Mangrove was really, really good. And Alex Whittle was really,
You
really
know what was
good.
strange?
Lovers Rock is probably the worst one.
Lover's Rock is my favorite. Um, the thing that is interesting is there's not a bad one here.
No, there's not. They're all a minimum of a 3-star movie, but I probably they're all 3.5 to 4
Probably
for
when you
me.
got through with it, Mangrove probably seemed like the most standard because it's
Yeah,
courtroom
yeah.
drama. And
hmm it's the trial of the Chicago Seven, but with black West Indians in London.
when I saw Trial of Chicago 7, I boldly called it the best film of the year. This was 3 months ago.
Yes, you did.
This was 3 months ago. And then I saw Mangrove. And I realized how Hollywood Trial of Chicago 7 seems.
Yeah,
Which I still
yeah.
think Trial of Chicago 7 is wonderful, but
It's very good. It's very
they're
good.
all different
But
in a different ways. Mangrove deals with this sort of restaurant that's being harassed and brutalized by the London police, white police officers, because there's not a black person on the force, and it's a courtroom drama, a very good
hmm
one.
it's set
Yeah,
1970.
Lovers Rock is my favorite. Can I call it
This is
magical?
it's an
Mm,
atmosphere. It's more than a movie. It's an atmosphere, and the music and the interlocking, interlacing, randomized
mhm.
stories that you know one character that you don't ever really that you hadn't seen at all, and then suddenly in the next 10 minutes they're like the only person you can
Yeah.
see.
What
It's a wonderful meandery kind of loose experiment of a
the
movie.
one thing that really captured my imagination was um, a scene late in the film that was absolutely captivating, and that's the scene where they start singing this song called "Silly Games," and the music is playing, and they're all dancing and singing to it, and the song
Yeah,
ends, and for the next 10 minutes they keep singing it, and they
right.
keep dancing to it. The music is gone from the record, but it's still in their soul.
It's still in the air. It's still moving them. It's a beautiful
It
sequence
is.
that just it is it just the power of music over mood
Mhm.
and um more than anything the reggae and music in general is a very big part of this
Yeah,
film
yeah.
series, but no more so than
Mhm.
here. Except maybe in the back half of Alex
Yeah.
Wheel, but
When you get here, this is the shortest of the films. It's an hour and 10 minutes, but they pack so much into it.
actually I think this is not the shortest one.
Really? I thought it's an hour and 10 minutes. I think the other ones are just slightly longer.
Education is 63
Okay,
minutes.
okay. Red, White, and Blue was that was really an interesting point to me because it's the star is John Boyega,
Yeah.
who said that a lot of his performance was informed by his experiences making Star Wars, and it's one
Yeah.
of the reasons he doesn't want anything to do with Star Wars ever again. And
Which is so
which is so
sad.
sad. He plays a young was it a research scientist?
Yeah, he's a research scientist. He has his PhD. He's applying to the forensics division of the police because he wants to help
Mhm.
people, and he's convinced by a couple people that he would make a better beat cop.
Yeah, and he gets involved. He becomes
And
the only black man on the force
right, and it becomes a quest, a mission for him
because his father's beaten up.
to right, yeah. I mean, it's he wants to not only stop the exclusion of black people from the police force, but work on, the police force arbitrarily searching,
Mhm.
beating black people just because they're black.
Yeah. And he can't
And
quit once he's in.
right.
He can't quit because he realizes that if he quits, he can't make a difference. The
Hmm.
movie kind of ends there.
Yeah.
It doesn't really tell you what. None of these films hold your hand really, and it
No.
ends um, kind of on a loose note, which is strange because I wasn't looking at the screen when the movie ended, and then it immediately
Hmm.
went over to Alex Weedle, and I was like, wait a minute. So I had to go back. I was like, wait a minute, because they were sitting at the table and they were having a drink. It was having a drink with his father, and I was like, wait a minute, because
Yeah.
it clicked over. Because when you're watching it on Amazon, the next one just starts,
Hmm.
and the next one was Alex Weedle, which again, this could have been a movie, a big movie all its own.
Yeah. This was really good. I liked Alex Weedle a lot. I think in parts it's the most
Yeah,
unfocused, which is
yeah.
weird because Lovers Rock is has no focus
Well,
whatsoever.
Lovers Rock was
But
supposed to be
uh,
unfocused.
you're right. Um, like the beginning, maybe first 20-25 minutes felt really
Mhm.
fragmented to me on Alex Weedle.
Well, the kid's in
But
prison,
then
but you're not
it
sure why.
right, and every time you think it's going to flash back to tell you that story, it tells you something completely
Mhm.
different.
It eventually does
You
tell
never
you why.
really, yeah. And over the course of the whole thing, which it starts to tighten up after that first
Mhm.
act, and then really comes alive.
This guy who plays Alex Weedle redefines wet behind the ears. I mean, this
Yeah, yeah,
complete innocent. He's just. I love it when he's walking down the street with his friend, and and the cops pass by, and he says, "Oh, but they're here to help us."
yeah, yeah. He like nods at him.
Yeah,
He nods at the police officer because Alex was brought up in uh, an
yeah,
orphanage.
yeah.
Um,
Abused in an orphanage.
oh, yeah. Well, because he was the only black kid
Right.
there, and racism,
Mhm.
lots and lots of
And
racism.
it follows the course of
So
his life
yeah,
until he gets to
yeah,
prison.
and right.
And that's the most helpful cellmate I've ever seen in my life.
He's that Rastafarian guy was awesome. Uh, with the exception, of course, of the fact that his hunger strike was messing up his stomach
And
and
again, we have to listen to
apparently his
somebody
bowel
defecating.
movements. Yeah, his bowel movements were very, very
Oh,
unpleasant
but
for everybody in the.
not only do we get to listen to him defecating, but we get to listen to him straining as he's defecating.
Yeah, see, this. I mean, this was just another in a long line of independent movies that I'm sitting there this year like, why do I have to watch people go into the can?
Well,
I don't want to watch people go into the can.
finally, we get to Small Education, which was this was surprising to me. I was shocked by this story because I'm sitting there for like it's a little over an hour long, and like for the first maybe 20 minutes, it's a story of this kid who's having trouble. What subject was it? Reading. He's having trouble.
Yeah, he couldn't
He
read
couldn't
well,
read well,
and he's like 12 or
and I'm
13.
thinking to myself, okay, this believe me, this is my story right here. This first 20 minutes because this was me with math, just not getting it
Mm.
and having everybody scream in your face when you're not getting it and not understanding what's going on. And they send him.
Which is not an effective teaching method, by the
No, it
by.
is not. and it stays with you for a long time.
Yes, it
And let me
does.
tell you, I was shocked. I don't know if you were, by the turn that this movie makes. They send him to a special school.
Hmm.
And when they say special school, even in my case, when they say special school, that means we're going to send you somewhere so you don't have to irritate us. We're sending you up
Right.
the line.
Right.
And he goes to this.
Now, this is special education in the
Right.
80s, which means there was no education.
But he goes to this very weird environment of kids who have clearly developmental issues and
Hmm.
things that should.
And are not being
Right,
supervised, let alone instructed.
right. And his mother is visited
And
by this woman who says, this is not an education.
right,
This is a systematic way of making sure that he remains in a mid-level, nothing job as he develops into adulthood.
right.
That was the.
And therefore there would be no expectation that his children would be able to rise up out of that. It's,
This was a
next.
shock to me when I saw this, because I sat there and I thought, because I thought it started out one way and then it turned and it became something else. I was shocked at the
Hmm.
turn that this took, and very glad that this is probably the only one of these that ends that has a happy ending, generally.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's all I got. Oh, we're going to talk about small acts in February because I want to talk about these for Black History Month. We're also going to talk about another
Mm.
film. I've decided to select another film because I'd also like to talk about One Night in Miami, which you have not seen yet.
Ah, which is on my. I just got the
Yeah,
disc yesterday,
which is
so uh,
Regina King does a beautiful job directing this movie about
yes, her directorial debut.
um, this supposed conversation between Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Sam Cooke in
Mhm.
1964.
Which I am very much looking forward
Yeah,
to because I am a huge fan of Sam Cooke and
huge fan of all of them.
all of them, really. Yeah, and for my February picks, as long as we're digging into that, I'm doing a Chadwick Boseman uh,
Tribute.
double. I'm doing one week is going to be Black Panther, and the next week, my next pick would be then Ma Rainey's Black
Mm-hmm.
Bottom. So we're going to be talking about that a whole lot more um,
So three brand new,
coming
well,
up in February.
not three films, but how many films?
Yeah, well,
9 films, I think.
enough, yeah. And coming up in our next episode, which will be slightly delayed, probably, uh, is going to be my pick. It'll be our first scheduled episode of the year.
We're having some scheduling problems because of
um,
the end of the year.
this was originally intended to be a live stream, and the technology was not working out to get us hooked up with that.
Right.
So, um, the next regularly numbered episode will be my pick is going to be a double bill of Yojimbo and
Mm-hmm.
Sanjuro, um, following my making you watch samurai movies in January trend. Uh, and what do you have set up? We have a fire sale review.
Star Trek, the motion picture. Star Trek, the slow
Yeah.
motion picture.
The, and you've got Doctor No, right?
At some point, yes. We're working it out. I'm thinking it over.
It's like that the old line that they said to Jack Benny is like, "Your money or your life," and he's dead quiet. And they said, "Well," he goes, "Well, I'm thinking it
Think it
over."
over. All right.
That wraps it up here for us, I think. You can find all of our back episodes at the podbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can listen to us on iTunes and YouTube. Hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button there. Follow us on Twitter at pod_bay. We are also on Patreon at that same handle. We thank you very much for joining us for this special episode, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.